Oil markets continue to remain on edge on day 13 of the war as well. There are no signals of de-escalation. Ships are wary of crossing the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude remained under $100 per barrel for 2 days in a row after touching $120 per barrel on Monday. Now again, oil has crossed $100 per barrel. Let's take a look at the oil prices that have moved, that has escalated. There was a little bit of downward spiral, but then an escalation once again with the help of the bar graphics. On the 9th of March, it was registered at $114.3 per barrel. 10th of March, that price comes down because there were signs of de-escalation. It came down to $89.44 per barrel and remained at $86.26 per barrel on the 11th of March. But then once again, there's a spike that has been witnessed, $100 per barrel on the 12th of March. Now, this comes amid the war intensifying in Middle East, not just that, the attacks that are taking place on the oil tankers now. So the missiles continue to fly, oil tankers continue to be targeted. That's the reason why directly you see an impact of that on the oil prices. This has come despite attempts by International Energy Agency to rein in the rising prices. Last evening only, the IEA decided to release 400 million barrels to strategic oil reserves. This is much higher than 182 million barrels released after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. So the crude has crossed $100 per barrel despite IEA's decision. Let's take a look at the decision that was taken, the measures that are being taken by IEA. IEA to release 400 million barrels from oil reserves. Strategic reserves of 32 members to address disruption that is being witnessed in the oil markets. And of course, the price is higher than last time. The release supply is also higher than the last time. 182 million barrels were released in 2022. US to release 172 million barrels from their strategic reserve. So these are the developments taking place, the measures that are being taken to ensure that the flow of fuel in the market remains steady. But despite that, of course, there are disruptions taking place because oil tankers are being hit and there are no signs of any thaw or de-escalation. 2026, 400 million barrels. US, Israel and Iran war has led to that. 2022, 182 million barrels. IEA to release oil from strategic reserve. This is just a comparative analysis for you of what transpired in 2022 amid the Russia-Ukraine war and what is happening now as far as the US, Israel and Iran war is concerned. India has welcomed IEA's decision to release emergency oil stocks amid the supply disruptions. US President Donald Trump also welcomed the International Energy Agency's decision to release oil reserves and in an attempt to stabilize the markets. The US is set to release about 172 million barrels. Now, experts are saying that these measures aren't helping cool down the prices due to continuous attacks that are taking place on container ships near the Strait of Hormuz by projectiles and a fear that this conflict could go on for a long time. However, as far as the situation on ground is concerned, like I said, multiple efforts being taken by countries, US to release 172 million barrels, but it's not helping stabilize the situation, and the reason for that are these continuous attacks that are taking place, the ships that are being bombed in the Persian Gulf, and the continuous attack on the oil refineries and the ships that are passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iran, however, has listed 3 conditions for ending the war. So while Donald Trump's flip-flop continues, Iran has come up with 3 conditions. What is Iran saying? What are their conditions? First, recognize Iran's legitimate rights. That's condition number 1. 2, payment of reparations. That's what Iran is demanding. Number 3, guarantees against future aggression. So Iran says if you can meet all the 3 conditions, then consider an end to the war. Let's go across. Srinjoy is getting us more details. Srinjoy, on one hand, of course, disruptions because oil tankers are being attacked, refineries are being attacked. And on the other hand, amidst the flip-flop by Donald Trump, Iran is pretty clear. 3 conditions, they say, meet them and the war can end soon.
The word reparations will not go down with President Donald Trump, who was originally a businessman. And we know reparations means what? That you've destroyed our Navy, you've destroyed our Air Force, you've destroyed our air defense system, you've destroyed our infrastructure, pay for it. Now, the Americans are going to ask, we've destroyed all these things, and now we have to pay for it? That's the first place where these negotiations will break down. because the war was to destroy all these things and also the nuclear facilities that the Iranians have. So if the war is to destroy these things, then how is it that America is going to pay for it? This is not, at least at this point, unless there is regime change that America favors, some kind of Marshall Plan. If there is regime change, and if there is a regime in Tehran which is favorable to the Americans, and that is hugely unlikely at this point, the kind of Marshall Plan links is not even possible. That's really the first thing. President Trump said that the war was close to ending. He has said that the war is won, except that we have to clean up our act a little bit. Now, that led to petroleum prices, crude oil prices going down from 120 to about $90 per barrel. But the war continues. Now, if the war is continuing, and if there are all these attacks on tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, then very clearly it's got to a stage when oil prices will go up. Now, you've spoken of these 400 million barrels. First of all, have they reached the ground?
Right.
They have to be extracted, pulled out from wherever reserve they are, brought to the market. That's going to take a while.
There are a lot of ifs and buts. If the war is to end, there are a lot of ifs and buts as far as America is concerned, Donald Trump is concerned. He also made a statement saying that whenever I want, the war will end. So given his recent statements, and Srinjoy, stay on with us. Recently, Donald Trump said the war will end soon. Whenever he decides, it should. But the cost of war is crude for countries like India. Let's take a look at some data in terms of what is the cost of this war. Oil prices are on fire. Brent has crossed $100 per barrel. This is the impact that other countries are having to deal with because of the war. Panic among the investors. Take a look at how the markets have fallen. The downward spiral is back. Sensex falls 800 points, Nifty by 1%. This is the impact on India in terms of oil prices, in terms of the markets crashing. And as far as air travel is concerned, it has not just been disrupted, but it has now become expensive as well. Government here in India is trying to shield the citizens through a lot of measures that they've introduced. Now, what are those measures as far as meeting the energy needs are concerned? Let's take a look. This is what the government says. 70% crude from routes outside of Hormuz. The government also says India is importing crude from about 40 countries. There are 2 crude cargoes on their way to India. Refineries are operating at high capacity. Remember that instruction was given to them to boost up the production. Domestic LPG output is up by 25%. Government also says no cuts in domestic PNG and CNG for vehicles. And as far as LPG delivery cycle is concerned, the LPG delivery cycle of 2.5 days has been maintained. So these are the measures and the assurances that are coming from the government. Let's go across to Hina, who's joining us in the broadcast with more details. Hina, you were just discussing the measures taken by the government and the assurances coming in as well. Yes, as far as ground reality is concerned, there is panic. We saw long queues as well. But government says situation is still under control. No need to panic.
Well, of course, government has been continuously trying to allay the concerns for people here in India. But let's go back to the main issue here, which is about surging oil prices, because that's our biggest worry. We can try and control the situation at our level here, if the war was to end, say, in the next few days. But if it goes on for quite some time, then clearly it's going to be very, very difficult for us as well to manage the situation. Why am I saying it? Because, just yesterday, Iran had actually warned that oil could reach $200 per barrel and its enemies will not be able to artificially lower the price of oil. Of course, Iran here was referring to US and Israel, the 2 countries that started this war against Iran. Now, yesterday, Iran warned of oil touching $200 a barrel. Are we moving towards that? That's the question that's being asked, because just just hours after the International Energy Agency decided that 400 million barrels of crude from the Strategic Oil Reserves will be, coming to the market, the idea was to somehow, improve the supply situation so that prices can really come down. But instead of prices coming down, what we have seen is that crude again has crossed $100 per barrel mark. So are we now moving towards what Iran mentioned, $200 a barrel? Because remember, like you were telling our viewers earlier, Iran has put now 3 conditions to end the conflict. And oil can only come down once the conflict gets over. These artificial measures, it seems, are not helping. This is what Iran mentioned. Now, Iran has given 3 conditions. Will America agree to those conditions or not remains to be seen?
Absolutely. Until then, there's just uncertainty. That is the only thing for sure. Hina, thank you for getting us the details. Enjoy will continue to be with us on the broadcast. Now, the Persian Gulf is on the edge. Commercial shipping across the Gulf is now under direct threat, with Iran reportedly targeting multiple vessels as the war enters day 13. Now, ever since the conflict began, more than 20 commercial ships, many of them carrying crude oil, have been hit or they've been damaged in attacks across these waters. And in the last few hours, the situation has taken an even more dangerous turn. According to the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, at least 3 commercial vessels have been struck by unknown projectiles in separate incidents across the Gulf region. Let's take a look at the visuals. There are 2 oil tankers that were targeted near Al-Basra in Iraq, setting them ablaze and killing 1 crew member. Huge blaze, massive blaze was witnessed after the oil tankers were hit. The crude oil tanker Sea Safe Vishnu, which is a US-owned vessel, was hit by a projectile, sparking a fire on board. And then you have another tanker which sails under the Malta flag that was also struck in the same area. Unfortunately, an Indian national has reportedly been killed in an attack, in this attack that we are talking about. Now, we have some breaking inputs lined up on the broadcast. On the 11th of March, a US-owned oil tanker was hit by Iran. The name of the oil tanker is Safe Sea Vishnu. It was sailing under the Marshall Islands flag. It was attacked near Basra in Iraq, in which 1 Indian crew member unfortunately lost his life. The remaining 15 crew members have since been evacuated to a safe place. The Embassy of India in Baghdad is regularly in contact with the Iraqi authorities and have rescued Indian sailors, is offering all possible assistance to them. Embassy has also extended its deepest condolences to the family members of the deceased crew member. So 1 Indian crew member was killed in this attack on a US-owned crude oil tanker, Safe Sea Vishnu. Now, this oil tanker was sailing under the Marshall Islands flag. It was attacked. It came under attack in Iraq near Basra. 1 Indian crew member was killed in this attack. The remaining 15 Indian crew members have since been evacuated to a safe place. Now, the embassy is also regularly in contact with the Iraqi authorities as far as the rescue operation is concerned. Few hours later, not too far from Dubai in UAE. Remember, we were talking about attack on oil tankers. Now, just few hours after that, from Dubai in UAE, a container ship was hit by a projectile, triggering a small fire on board. Darkness made it difficult to fully assess the situation. The crew, however, is safe and there are no reports of any environmental damage. This attack comes a day after a Thai-flagged vessel, Mayuri Nari, headed towards Gujarat. The Kandla port in Gujarat was engulfed in flames at the Strait of Hormuz after being struck by projectiles. 20 crew members have been rescued while 3 are still reported missing. Reports suggest the attack was carried out by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We have Srinjoy on the broadcast. He continues to be with us. Srinjoy, on one hand, of course, there are concerns and worries about the rising fuel prices. On the other hand, the casualty figure also keeps on increasing. Now, in the latest, we're given to understand that Mayuri Nari was attacked. 3 members are still reportedly missing.
Yes, and the missing, the bodies have not been found. It is entirely possible that these 3 who were in the engine room may have received the brunt of the assault, and as a result are currently missing. That's, of course, the first thing. Then almost every day you will find an attack on a ship or a tanker or a freighter, whatever it is, and there will be Indians on board, and then casualties become inevitable. Even if they are not Indian ships, even if they are not ships flying the Indian flag, there are Indians in on other ships, and these are getting hit as well. Plus, let's not forget, 9 million Indians, 9 million plus Indians are in the area. So if there is a missile that goes a little off target, if there is another missile that's hit something, is intercepted, and the debris falls, then there is something. Then the dangers, there are so many of these. Then there is the possibility of, let's say, other targets being hit and Indians being close by. So all of this puts a lot of Indians in danger.